thank you for waiting
Of course.
and being here. We'll go ahead and let you talk about marketing initiatives.
This is nice, guy. What you did here is good. Yes. Well, I had a little talk with Ty this afternoon to get the agenda figured out for tonight and with Andrew. So I think, Ty, if you would introduce it by talking about the Tierra Verde project and what you did, tax sale and all that, and I'll pick it up from there.
Yeah, so council remembers, and we had quite a bit of discussion when Tierra Verde went to Lance, the sheriff's sale, and the city did bid, or the land bank did bid on those parcels, and ended up paying, I think, roughly $50,000 for the back taxes that were due. And so now have ownership to those, all but 2 lots over there. One is still vacant, but owned by the owner of the building over there. That's the Bel Aire Recovery Center. And so when we took, when the land bank took control of those, it's zoned commercial, and it was originally planned to be a medical type corridor facility locations. And so I went to Marlon, who handles all of our commercial, and I said, Marlon, what are we going to do with this? And so that's where he started looking at options and coming up with ideas, and he came up with the idea of maybe looking at actually some large tract residential instead of commercial. So that's kind of where we're at. So Marlon.
Okay. Well, I'm no expert in residential. We got one here, though. But I do kind of get around and talk to people. And one of the things that we have recognized, is that Wichita, Bel Aire, this whole community is full of people that have toys, that have cars or motorhomes or boats or hobbies or just a lot of things that they want. And I did do some marketing of the product out on Webb Road a number of years ago. What do they name it now? The warehouses, the storage units.
Yeah.
Executive storage. Executive store. Sold a number of those units, and there's millions of dollars worth of cars in that little area there on Webb Road. And wealthy people own those. And the theory was, if you want a toy box, why not have it behind your house? Well, when Ty came up with this, I'm looking at these lots, and they're like 2.8 acres. Well, that's way too big for a house lot, and we didn't want to compete with our own industrial park, so we don't want to do industrial there. Plus, we were trying not to let the industrial encroach west of Webb Road. So the idea was to develop a new residential product where a person could build a nice home and have land left over that you could build a hobby building or a storage building that was high quality, that looked good in the neighborhood, and that he could carry on what his hobby was. So that was kind of the concept. Decided that we didn't need 2.8 acres for that, typically. And then we looked at what those people now were doing with their, to do that, and many of them were going out in the country, having to buy 5-10 acres, mow grass they didn't really want to mow, with wives that they didn't want to really live in the country, and driving on dirt roads that they didn't really want to drive on. But they didn't have any choice, because there was nothing in the city. I'm a president of a homeowners association, and I know we have large lots, and we fought those guys off. And I thought, well, what a novel idea, but to invite them and to encourage them to come in, as long as there are controls, and it's done in a business-like way. So with that in mind, Ty and I went to visit with MKEC and explained the idea to them, and they got all over it. They thought that was great. Of course, everybody knows somebody that would like to have a lot out there. So this picture here, I don't know if you've got it in front of you, shows, oh, sorry. So this was what you have right now, and those lots 2.8 acres, and then the large block 1 on the lower left is not divided up. But there's nothing really magic about the size of those lots. They can be divided down smaller. Can you get the next one, Ty? So we went to MKEC and asked them to take this plat and configure it differently to accommodate a different repurposed use. There you go. So what you see here is each one of these lots, the darker colored ones, the gold ones, that's your house, and then you have a lot behind it. I was in Denver last week, coming back from Denver on I-70. I saw a whole development. We ended up actually getting off I-70 driving it and looking at those. And it's exactly what we're talking about doing here, except those lots are probably not quite as nice as we want to be. But each one of those has a hobby building behind them. And then we asked MKEC to do the next drawing. And this then shows, it's just to give us perspective, you can build 4,000, 5,000, 4,200 square foot residence. And I said something about pools, and you stuck pools in all of them. I didn't really intend
All right.
That's just to prove we can put one there and still have room for 5,000, 3,000, 5,000 square foot hobby house. And and still have this easement back here behind would be for trailer storage. If you've got a collection of Corvettes, you won't be able to drive or trailer them out. So we need to have outside storage additions there. And so we've got the storage areas back here on that easement. Here we've got railroad tracks, which really probably wouldn't be the greatest idea to have for a residential addition, but for this, it's fine. It's pretty well. So this was kind of the idea. Build a house up front, build your pool, your recreational area for your family, and in the back, your dad gets whatever he wants. So we looked at the idea and started very privately, very quietly showing it around people. And I have to tell you, I have not had one person says this is a dumb idea. Yeah, not one. So the next phase was to interview, because I'm not a residential guy, interview some residential brokers who would have access to customers like that. And so the criteria was to find somebody that would understand the concept, would have relationships with builders, and would have some kind of an affinity for Bel Aire. Lives here, has developed here, has sold here. Those are kind of the conditions, what we were looking for. But the conditions of the sale, I think, were really very important. We had to make sure that the thing was priced. When you calculate the special assessments and the price of the property, they had to be in an area that was affordable. And so we had to adjust and work with that a little bit. And so in your next slide, you've got, next slide, yeah, that. This is an example of the pricing. They go as low as $75,000 and up as high as $300,000. You know, some there were larger lots on the lake, just depending where you want to be. So range again, you're at 8 acres on the high side, and 1.1 is probably the smallest. And the specials, there was a lot of talk about specials. Builders are so sensitive to what the specials are, and so there's an adjustment here between the price of the land and the specials to where we think we can position it in the marketplace. And in a moment we'll get more into the pricing. But at list or lot prices of these numbers, with specials being this number per month, Ty tells me this thing works from an economic standpoint for what you've got in it and what you need to get. So with that.
And of course, these lots have this full utilities and everything too, because of the specials.
Yeah, right.
Are utilities already there?
Yes.
But you're replating, so you'll have to change some of that, right?
I'm sorry?
If you replat, you'll have to change some of those utilities, is
No.
that correct?
No, I don't think so.
What we'll do is, so phase one, can you back it up, Kyle? Okay, so right now, can I see the pointer? So right now, so for example, we're looking at phase one being to about here, these lots here. And so this is one lot now, so we would do a simple lot split.
There's no
And-
utilities between them.
Right, so we split the lot, and then we just simply send a letter to the county and tell them that that lot was split, and to split the special assessments.
And that doesn't affect utilities at all.
Nope.
They don't have to go in and do something different.
Because we don't have a water meter set yet or anything on those, so the mains are there, we just have to put in 2 meters.
Okay.
So we discussed with Ty the conditions of the marketing. What exactly do we want to accomplish? What is going to be required? We talked about this, adjusting these specials, making it economically feasible, and establishing the pricing. You've seen that. But what Ty doesn't want to do is to have to manage a concept like this, 20, 30 times with individual customers, individual homeowners, and work with their idea where the shrubberies ought to be and the fencing and all that. He didn't want to do that. He shouldn't do that. So what we wanted to do was to find a broker that had a really good relationship with builders. And what we wanted to do was have this development be a builders-only development. And be a limited number of builders and selected builders that really, again, got the concept. And then finally, we wanted to find builders that were both financially able and willing to put models up. So if you got 4 builders, if you got 4 models, you got a pretty good start on the concept. So we looked around. I interviewed several brokers, talked about it, and then I got to meet Andrew. Andrew is a local boy, lives here, real smart, and he
To be determined.
he's a broker, and he has a passion for the concept. We talked about it. It didn't take him long at all to figure out that this would work, because he's in this market. He's worked with the customers here, and he has good relationships with builders, and really liked the idea of selling everything to builders. So if Joe Blow comes in and wants to buy one of these, you say, okay, here are 4 builders. You choose what you want to use, and you buy the lot from them. That's the strategy, and that keeps staff here out of having to answer a lot of questions. So I will close with this. The objectives have been in this whole process to bring cash to Bel Aire, to give you relief from special assessments, to add tax base to Bel Aire, and to bring a unique product to Bel Aire that just doesn't exist.
I think these will sell really fast.
Yeah.
What's interesting is I'm an aviation guy, so I see this and I think, well, that's an air park, but it's not for aviation people. It's an air park for people with ground vehicles.
But your point is,
it's that same kind of.
I'm sure you probably got an airplane at Benton then, right?
Well, I don't. That's my dream. My dream.
Well,
That's my dream.
Pretty cool up there.
But that's what I see. I mean, that's I've never seen anything like that. That's very, very intriguing.
How do you see the railroad tracks impacting the marketability of these lots? That'd be my concern as somebody that was interested in buying this is, I'd love to own one of those, build one of those, but they're probably going to be really nice, expensive homes right next to a railroad track.
No, that's a great question.
With the noise, right?
I don't mean this to sound the wrong way or rude by any means, but what I'll say is beggars can't be choosers. This is an extremely unique setup. And so what I feel pretty strongly about is that railroad track, in a sense, to this buyer, the buyer that's wanting this product, what they really like is privacy and they like space. So what that is to me is that same buyer that's buying this will object more to a home behind their home than they will a private railroad track. And that's just my opinion. I don't see it really honestly as any objection whatsoever.
That's what I kind of thought when I saw that. When you mentioned the railroad tracks, I was
almost
wondering
think
that, but I was also thinking, you know, it's not a super frequent railroad track.
It's
There's no
not.
crossing there. And yeah, storing stuff in the back, I mean, you kind of don't want someone else's house right
is.
there. So that, yeah.
It's a
I think
very
that's
low
great
traffic
point.
railway right now anyways.
10 mile an hour.
Yep. There's not, I mean, living out here, there's not a lot that goes through there. And again, I think you gotta just keep going back to, so when we started talking about this, you know, I think it's very important to continually try to isolate down who the buyer is for this, and really think about how they would object to certain things. And I think if you really do think about who the buyer is, I think that again, that almost becomes a positive. Now, don't get me wrong, being on the opposite side, backing up to a pond obviously would be the ultimate.
So it's higher price.
That's why it's higher priced. But to be able to get what you're gonna get out here, I really don't see the railroad track, honestly, to answer your question directly, I don't see it as an issue really at all.
Do you think that, like Willow Bend, that same railroad track, past Willow Bend, they have a wall up there?
Yep.
I don't know what, 6 foot, 8 foot wall, I don't know the
Yep.
exact height of it. I've seen it, but I
Yep.
don't know what the size is. Do you think that that could be something that buyers would want there?
I
That'd
think-
probably pricey, I think, for that stretch. It's probably-
It would,
probably
and
$500
here's-
million, but-
The other nice thing about the railroad, so when you go out to this property and you walk it and you stand out there, you've got quite a few trees that run along that railroad track the way it is right now. So a lot of the back end of these lots will actually have natural barrier. And then again, I think the second thing actually that the railroad actually kind of does as a benefit would be it almost creates a barrier and a wall to the industrial side on the opposite side of the railroad tracks. So when you're actually standing down on those lots, it's hard to visually see past those over to this glass building.
Is it? Okay.
And so to me, again, I think it actually creates some privacy for these lots, which again, this particular buyer loves the idea of country living, but they like the convenience of being paved roads, which is a very large, you know, you can talk about something similar that's right up here on North Rock Road, that they've got 5 acre lots, but that's a dirt road setup, which is much less attractive than the streets. So when you're actually out there, it does create this sense of privacy. You feel like you're out away from the city, but yet you also feel private, and you feel convenient and close to a lot of the things that are going on in Wichita right now.
What do you think the perception of having the rehab facility right there?
It's another really good question, and it actually, I don't mean to get cheesy on people with this, but so driving out there, and I was even asking my wife about it and what her thoughts were, and the more I think about it, I think the more it actually goes and talks to what this piece of ground is. So if you really think about what that facility is, it's a rehab center, and it's a nice rehab center. The reason they chose that particular location is because it's very peaceful, it's tranquil, it's quiet, it's a lot of open sky, it's good sunsets, it's comfortable. That's what those people need, which is what this development simply is offering. So honestly, I think yes, it could be an objection, but I think it could be talked to as a reason behind what this development is and why it's out here, you know? So again, I think they can be objections, and I don't want to make it sound like no one's going to object to these items. What I do want to say, though, is maybe from a marketing standpoint, I do believe we have I do think we can overcome those objections with most of these buyers. Especially, again, when you isolate it down, you really think, we are talking in phase 1, 12 lots, which you're talking only 12 opportunities is the way I really see it for the buyers that are looking for something like this.
Sorry, go ahead.
What is the commitment level you've gotten from builders?
It's another good question. So I do have my background. I think most of you guys know I've been working in Central Park. And the model that we really strided for to begin with in there was a model that we were running with some design, and then our builders were building our designs. That has taken some time to really get going, but I feel like we have now achieved that momentum with these builders. We've gotten buy-in from the builders. The builders have built some of our designs out here, and we have sold those houses. Everything we've designed and they have built is under contract at the moment. So we have gotten a good level of buy-in from the builders. I've got 3/4 that are extremely interested in this and who would be, I think, fairly close to going ahead and jumping in on at least one model to begin. 2 of those builders are ones that I'm working with right now here in Central Park. Artistic builders and Prairie Construction we work with regularly out here. And then there's another bigger name that I'll probably just keep quiet for the moment that has also expressed serious interest out here. With the builder community, the guys that I have sat with and I've proposed this to, again, the concept, home run. These guys totally see it. They totally understand about it. They understand there's a market for this. It's a niche market. Their big reservation, as Marlon mentioned earlier, is just making sure those numbers work. So I think as long as the numbers work out and we're feasible here, I think they all see this as a very strong play, which verbal commitments, but I have gotten verbal commitments from 2 builders they'd be ready to go.
So earlier Marlon said that the numbers work from the city finance perspective. Do they work from the perspective of the buyer?
It's a very good question as well. So I have really tried to dig into the numbers a little bit on what we see here. I think one of the best areas we can actually look at for maybe small comparable purposes, I don't think there is an immediate area you can just comp out this. But are you guys familiar with the Brookfield development? It would be right to the north of the North Greenwich development that's all happening. It's a Ritchie development on North Greenwich. It's a newer development. It just pretty much started.
Don't get out that hard.
So it's a newer development.
Yeah.
It's probably only 2 years old.
Mm-hmm.
It's just to the north. It's on North Greenwich, so you feel like you're kind of out on the edge a little bit, but you're pretty close to the development on North Greenwich.
That one there, K96?
Yes.
Yep.
Just north of the
that.
school.
Just
Yep.
north of there. Okay. Between the school and it, or north of the school?
Just,
North of it, okay.
it'd be just north of that school.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So they have some bigger lots in there.
Mm-hmm.
Those larger lots in there, the largest lot they have is 1.
Of course, they're advertising their homes start at the 300s, but yeah, they're all, then the first one I see is 480 to 513.
It's your typical bait.
Yeah.
You get people in the door and then you know.
Yeah.
In these homes, I mean, I just will be honest with you, we are forecasting and seeing more 600 to 1 million would be who we're seeing as our target buyer.
Plus the lot or lot included?
Lot included.
Okay.
5,000 square
Plus
foot,
the back
$200
door.
a square
Plus,
foot.
I think your all-in number, depending on how elaborate some of these get, are going to end up being 6 to 8. When I'm talking to the builders, I think they are more comfortable at the moment on these models to be in more of that 600 range to start. I think it's inevitable, though, that what happens in this scenario is you are going to end up with mostly custom clientele once the idea is out there. And so I think that will drive cost up.
Because even at 600, you're not even talking about any of the amenities with the outbuilding or anything
So
like
what
that.
we've talked a little on that. What we actually have started to discuss a little bit is I do feel pretty strongly that the hobby house, if you will, it's going to be a plethora of different things from house to house. One guy's going to use it for cars. Another guy's going to use it for simple boat storage. Another guy may have a workout facility in it. Another guy may make it a pool house / workout facility. So I think the goal would honestly be to design the house, build the model, and then have the hobby house area set up, but don't go and build those out yet. Let that be something that is created by the homeowner. So again, most builders, to go to a builder and tell them to do $1 million spec is just it's a hard sell for builders today, rightfully so. But I think if we could control it and we get unique in our ideas and our approach, we do have design capabilities at our company. That's what we're doing out here is we're designing the houses. And so what that does is it's inevitable that you end with a lot of conversation and customization. So I think that's where we really play on, at least the models, for instance, would be these back buildings not being built out, but yet maybe the foundation and the footprint is there, and then from there they can elaborate. To go back to the economics, in Brookfield, the biggest lot over there is 1.56 acres in that development just on North Greenwich, and that one's sold for 120, and that's 1.56. They have, so to kind of just get full circle here, there's somebody here in this neighborhood that's renting that I've ran into who actually has a lot reservation on another lot over there, and it's a 1.06 acre lot, and they're the second reservation in line on this lot, and it's $100,000. So I think that it's just a matter of making the numbers work for you guys. I think we are in line with the numbers. It's, you know, they are bigger numbers. You know, my preference would probably be to get the specials as competitive as we can, making a trade-off, whether that be in sales price to specials, one way or the other. That would be my only voice in that when it comes to the economics.
Will we have to build any more road to do this, or is the existing road takes care of it?
Only to the extent that you've got piece down here, where this street stops, you know, this part in here that is, as I said, is going to be phase 2. So you'll have to either build a series of roads back in here. But there again, I'm thinking that what you'll do is you'll put those on special assessments for the benefit district being this area right here.
Are there already specials on that portion of the property?
I think so. Are there?
There are.
Yeah.
On that piece?
So the specials for the road that's there have already been spread to that part.
Right.
So those specials would be even higher for those properties back there.
Or like what, and that's what we've tried to do on the costs, is to keep the specials down. You know, the lot sale, which is what we're proposing on the list that was there. We would take a portion of that money, pay down specials, and then the rest of the revenue would go to the city to basically pay off some of the specials that we've already paid. And that gets those prices. So that's what we would look at is, and those are bigger parcels, you can see, those are 3 acres, some of them are 3 acres and such. So the price may be closer to 200, and then we pay off some of all those additional specials. Or there was a talk of, you know, does that become a private road with a gated community? Well, I don't know. You know, that's where we see what the market does in phase 1 to decide what we do with phase 2.
Okay. Would you put any restrictions on those outbuildings, like the material types? I mean, I can see somebody putting up a metal building there. If you didn't have restrictions, I don't know if that makes sense or not, but to put restrictions on there, but I would think, what's your thought on that?
I think it's going to be difficult not to build out middle buildings. But what you can do is any surface that faces a street has to be decorated in some kind of an architectural way.
Okay.
And you'll have to have architectural controls. To that point, we have covenants written, a draft, and Andrew's actually looking at those now. They're pretty extensive, and he's going to probably pare them down a little bit. But those covenants will be recorded before we sell the first lot.
Okay.
So you have that protection.
Well, and speaking on that, my dad built a 40 by 60 garage.
There you go. Does he need
on
another one?
What's that?
Does he want another one?
But he basically took, you know, the pad, put metal frame, and then the outside did siding, because really the cost was pretty negligible if you had gone metal or the siding on it. So
Oh, really?
yeah, it's there's not a whole lot of difference in the two things. So, and I mean, just because he wanted to look good, he made it match the house. I mean,
I do think you'd still have to have an architectural design control
Right.
over the buildings, just like you do over the houses. Maybe it's a little looser, maybe the way those are worded out is a little less, but I do think, especially at this price point, you're going to want to control some of that still. But, you know, I think that it's, even metal structures, honestly, I think we could make look really well.
They can dress them up pretty nice, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, there's one point that we haven't made yet. If you look at this drawing, you see these streets up here and stop, and here and stop. You've got 80 acres right up here. If this concept works well, then it's just a matter of just extending these streets and looping them. And you have a whole nother addition that you can do with this same concept.
Is there any thought about doing additional development in that area, like around that pond? I mean, there's that little area there across from the rehab center.
Yeah, this is the one that includes that 80.
Oh, yeah.
And this would be the, and obviously it's not there, so it could be anything you want. This was contemplated, that this thing would loop.
Okay, so somebody was planning on putting a pretty good sized campus in there or something.
It's impressive.
Wish I could afford one.
Why not?
I think there is a big buyer pool for it.
Yeah.
So is the concept then that, like we did with the developer agreement on some of these Central Park things with Bannister, did we do it with Bannister? We did it with Reed. Well, we did it with him. I know he's involved in it. Okay. So are we thinking of doing a similar type of developers agreement on this property?
No, I think this is one where we would just be the owner of the parcels, and then it would be like we did prior to Andrew taking over the lots. We would own the lots, and then he would do the models, and we would sell the lot, and then somebody wanted a custom home, then we'd sell that lot.
So are we talking about holding the lots for the builders as they build until it sells?
Right. Yep.
Well, we'd sell the lots, right?
Yeah, to the builders.
You'd have 4 lots sold right away. So you would sell the lot.
So okay, I know we've talked about in the past, if a builder's willing to build a spec home, is holding basically, we would hold the lot until it's sold, and then we would.
And that's something we haven't talked, I mean, it would be something we'd have to talk about to the builders and things like that.
I mean, I know if somebody's willing to build a house, that's usually not a big issue for them.
It's usually not. I mean, especially with the builders. Again, the idea would be to close builder, and so we are just selling lots directly to builders. But the buyer's got to come in, they're going to look at their options, they're going to have design capabilities, we can help them with that piece of it. But then they isolate down to which one their builder is going to be. The builder then purchases the lot outright, and then they build, and then they'd sell to the homeowner technically when it's done.
I mean, I know my wife being in real estate, she runs into nobody doesn't want 3 acres.
No.
With a big shop in the back.
No. And you can't find it.
No, you can't.
The only way you're going to find it is you go up north of here, and what ends up happening is you end up with 10 acres or 20 acres or 30 acres to get that. And honestly, we've talked a little bit about this, I think you're going to see quite a few, what I would say, younger professionals really be interested in this. The younger professionals don't want 10 acres. They don't want 5 acres. They want a little space to have their toys, but they don't want to spend an entire Saturday mowing 8 acres. I mean, they just don't want to. So this is kind of that happy medium that you're just not finding elsewhere.
This is exciting.
Yeah, I think so.
So, appreciate any other questions for this, and we'll.
Almost just want to have, it puts us back into being the developer. And like to say, we want to get out of that business. And so I'm just wondering if we can't move to being a developer, move to not be the developer again. If there's some way we can do that.
Oh, I'm happy with it. I think it'd be great.
Having land sit empty, not sit empty anymore.
What's that?
Said, yeah, empty land, not sit empty anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know, I hear you, Jim. I mean, it stinks, but
I mean, and really, if you look at it, we're not necessarily the developer as much as kind of the overseer of the development and how it is. I mean, we're just saying, this is how it's going to be, you go build it.
And we're way more than recouping our investment cost when we bought these lots back. Way more.
Our goal, I think, as the team that would be trying to market the situation, would be to really try to help from the development angle as much as possible, where you are sitting technically in developer chair, but we'd really like to isolate, like Marlon has said, get some of that off Ty's plate, where we can, we could basically run it like what we're doing here, but no, we would not be owning the land. That would still be on the city. But really take the workload off is what we'd like to do.
And the other concern we had is, like I said, it was designed for commercial. You can see that as zone commercial, but we don't want to compete with ourselves with and who's going to want to buy that area and compete with Commerce Park, because we've got a good price going on our land over there, and so then that leaves commercial, which we're trying to get commercial as well. But that's a struggle. So when they said that, hey, we can do large lots, and phase 1 is 12 lots potentially, and if they can put 4 in the first year, 4 models, the phase 1 could be potentially sold out in 2 years, 3. It just depends on what the market does.
I like the concept. I like the idea. What would the next best option be if we didn't do this?
None.
Zone for offices. You don't want it to be industrial. You might be able to get a little bit of office development on the front, maybe, but there's not a lot of demand for that right now. And so you back down to houses again. And then you'd have to, your thing wasn't designed for that. Your lots are way too deep for houses, unless you want to sell little noodle lots. And so you just don't have a lot of options, really. But that, to answer your question, probably residential.
Okay. It's residential, or residential.
Or residential.
But there's a reason why you see
Yeah.
places like Reed's Cove and Hawthorne that sold almost immediately, and all these other rigid developments.
Yeah, I mean, the specials on these lots are killing us financially. And so I want to move on whatever can get these lots sold the fastest.
Amen.
I'd also prefer not to be developer on anything.
You can't have both.
Okay.
I mean, the nice thing is we're in that unique position where we can control what this is. Have this sold at that auction to the lowest bidder, really, because there was one person bidding against you, and it was super low. So, I mean, they could have done anything with this. They could have asked for residential, and then it could have become trailer parks. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying.
Then they could have paid
They
the
don't
specials.
allow them.
That would have brought tornadoes.
In your list of demographics that you're trying to hit in your marketing, don't forget the model train guys, because there's 2 model train shows every year in Wichita. I guarantee if you showed that map of the plots to a bunch of room full of model train people,
I already
they're always
built
looking for
mine
some
in
big
my
building to build their
house, by the
layout.
way.
It's the hobbyist
Yeah.
and the enthusiast, and they come in many different forms. There's the train guy, there's the car guy, there's tons of those
Yeah, there is.
hobbies out there, and you just can't find the houses to really suit those.
If you look at executive stores, there's a lot of stories in there. And you have guys that just want to get away from home for a while, and they've got their man caves.
Yep.
There it is.
And they watch Monday Night Football over there.
It's a
with their
cigar
buddies.
lounge. And,
Yep.
yep.
And then you've got guys that have kids that have some athletic skills, they think, and they want to make basketball courts for them, or a pitching cage. So there's just an awful lot of things that you can do there. The thing that you have to be a little bit careful of is that I don't think you want to have people running businesses out of there. You don't want to have an industrial type feel. It has to be. So again, you go back to your covenants to protect that. But there are just a lot of, I think we'll be really surprised at the different types of uses we'll find back there.
Much to our surprise.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing this.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys. So,
Thank you.
we'll move forward. We don't need anything on the agenda for this, do we? If we're just doing it, or do we need to officially?
Really, all we've got to do is, we have to do a marketing agreement, so that they can
So
listen.
do we need to rezone it and replat and do the replatting?
No.
We,
Not at this point.
yeah, we'll just do lot splits.
And it's
The
zoned
zoning.
commercial?
Yeah, the covenants, so, yeah. Yeah.
Is it not zoned commercial though?
Yeah, zone commercial.
So we'll have to
But
We
rezone
want
it.
to downzone it to large acre lots, that way they have the comfort of more commercial.
Andrew and Marlon, we want you two to make a whole lot of money off of this.
It could be a good thing. I mean, it can. It could be good for everyone. Yes.
All right, appreciate that. Let's bring Ted up now, and speaking of budget, yeah, all of a sudden have $1 million homes on vacant land, even if we are developers.
What's the name of the building? Building of Elk Creek that I brought in?
Was it?
Is that artistic? Is that artistic?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, okay.
Sweet. Good deal.
So with this, I know we had a lot of questions last time about an extra maintenance worker, and what else did we discuss? We did some questions there, and the mowing, and where we are.
Good water. Anybody need water?
I'm good.
I'll grab one if you're getting up. Yeah, this first page, and we won't go through each. Want to? We can't.
No.
I'm always up for a good budget conversation. We have right now, and places we're right there in the middle. I think 2 years ago, the city of Wichita Eagle put out a big spread on is important with the city. We talk about these development deals all the time, and it's important that we have a adequate reserve, so if there is any kind of correction in the market, we can survive until we get to the next budget cycle. On the core service sides, we're maintaining all the service that our residents expect to see with this budget. The question mark I had is kind of the question marks we had last workshop, and I'll get into those after this front page. I just want to go through some of the bullet points. We're increasing our payments, our principal payments to debt service. It's a scheduled increase, but no less, we need to tell our residents we're accelerating our debt to try to get out of debt as quickly as possible.
That's not an optional acceleration.
No. Well, it was optional back when we refinanced,
But it's no longer
and we chose that option
Right.
too, because we wanted it. On the employee side, I think we do pretty well with our employees, but we did include a salary study and merit increase for all employees.
Salary and benefit study? Or just
Yeah,
separate?
salary and benefits. Sorry, on the maintaining buildings, I think everybody's in agreements on doing kind of an efficiency study, and as many times as seen the mayor go over to the thermostat today, I think we need a little efficiency study, and then have some available money to be able to fix those findings if we have them. As you know, we all have limits, so anything that we will be spending inside the budget, that's a large amount, will come before council because we can't spend it unless you guys approve it. So I don't want to scare you with some of these numbers. It's more of a placeholder so that we have the money available if we want to fix some things. New City Hall carpet. Really, a lot of this stuff is upkeep this great building we have. Believe it or not, it's getting to the age where you need to replace the carpet and certain things. The support for the Chamber of Commerce, I went ahead and put a check mark on it. I think everybody's somewhat in agreement, but it's worth a try. I think that's what was the general consensus, but we can always revisit everything. Provide rebranding for materials, police vehicles, and I went ahead and put the police uniforms inside that bullet point. That's kind of part of the rebranding process. quality of life issues, and this is where it's really the maintenance worker and the rehab at Bel Aire Park, what we kind of want to do with that. There's several options we can discuss later in this packet, but those were the question marks I got when I walked away last time. Resurface recreation parking lot, kind of like we did in City Hall a few years back. Brian did get an estimate, and it was around 28,000, but he still thinks that if we are doing a bunch of street projects, we might be able to piggyback on somebody. And so he says he's still, Brian, he's always looking for a deal. So I guarantee you he's going to look for the best deal. But I said, all right, we'll just leave it at 30 so that we're covered with the original estimate. Celebrating our 40th anniversary is another kind of, I know it's a check mark, but at what level we talked about in our community development, maybe increasing the events budget more than usual just because it's our 40th and maybe getting some more stuff. On the capital improvement side, $400,000 is spent on street improvements, kind of like we did this year, almost exactly. We pick between the projects that need to be done and prioritize and do those. And then also, I think really important is cash finance a portion of the Woodlawn expansion. So those are the check marks you can see is what does this budget do? We can go straight down the list and tell them what exactly this budget does, and it's the way it's written now. We can get into the discussion items I pointed out, or if anybody has any problems with any other issues. On page 2, I'm trying to do some more graphs for people. I'm kind of a spreadsheet guy, but I'm working on graphs. Even with all these minor, these spending priorities, I put it all in my calculator, and I said about 80% of our spending goes to core services. That's debt, police, court, admin. That's including finance and paying our bills on time, planning and zoning and land. Non-departmental is mainly buildings upkeep, a lot of that stuff where we share a building. That's 80% of our budget. So I really think that's a pretty good number for the core services. And if anybody's looking at our budget, they can see we're not spending too much anywhere else, but really we can't because of our situation on debt. Parks, recreation, community development, seniors, about 13% of our budget. Transfers for streets, about 6%, and transfers for other capital improvements and equipment reserves about 1%. So that makes up the individual spending. On the next graph kind of shows a holistic where our budget, where our reserves is, and how we even have a little bit more than our 30% reserves as planned last workshop. We don't want to spend all the way up to our limit because, one, I got to talk to S&P and tell them why we're going underwater by, $1 million, or it's better to gradually spend that money throughout maybe 2 or 3 years instead of just all in one hit. But I did want to show you where our revenues plus reserves compared to our spending was on the 2 bar charts. Future obligations, again, always looking out towards the future. A lot of those future obligations are accelerating land debt up to that $1.5 million per year spending. And the good thing is we have provisions in there that say if we sell a big chunk of industrial land, then we can lower that payment. So it really determines on how we perform on the industrial side is where that's going to go. The stuff that is known is Woodlawn and is 37th and 53rd Street next year will hit the budget. Ann and Dave worked really hard on the outsourcing mowing on page 3. I think this is in relation to our maintenance worker, and I'll let someone else talk if they want, if they've already reviewed this. Pretty straightforward to me. Roadsides and ditches are pretty hard to contract out. I was driving to work the other day, and we kind of talked about seasonal and how dangerous. If you're unfamiliar with the landscape, I think the state had a wildlife worker roll an ATV over a hill when he was mowing, and I think I don't know, but that was a seasonal worker that wasn't really sure maybe what the terrain was. So I think Dave is really protective over his roadsides and ditches to make sure that they're done safe and appropriately. On the contracting out on page 4 for parks and common areas, I think Dave explained it pretty well. that's what we do is those parks listed, and then the large properties it's mainly large open area like Terra Verde and Sunflower Park open areas. I think, and this sheet here kind of talks more, if everybody got this one in their packet.
Seasonal.
It was at the very bottom.
The very bottom, it might be. We just snuck it in, I think. That really shows the need, or what you guys were asking is, what can we do more? Ty might be able to speak a little better on it than I can, but I think if you read it, you kind of understand that our Public Works Department runs everywhere, and I think a lot of it is getting the stuff that's not getting done actually done. That's my synopsis, but Ty might be able to go a little
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And unfortunately, Ann was saying that roads, potholes always get done because it's a safety issue, but crack repair and different things like that always get put to the last because they're installing sewer taps or water taps or mowing or et cetera, et cetera. And then I also did some research. Justin had asked me some additional information that back when I started, we actually had 14 full-time Public Works employees, and now we're down to 9. And just adding a person gets us to 10. So, and that was 12 years ago. So
There's a lot more land to maintain now.
So, and we're growing, we're putting in 100 new residences a year, which we didn't used to do, and things like that. So I see it as, we've actually known for quite some time that we needed an additional person. It's just when could we afford it? And Ted and I always talk about the budget and can we afford it? Can we, bring back another person? And this was the year that Ted felt that, we could do that. And so we're still not back where we used to be.
And really what we're doing, if you remember the buckets from fund accounting class you took with me at the beginning, so the general fund supported 2 employees with their parks, and then we had more or less 9 employees for our utilities. Last year we were 30% above the previous year on water hookups, and every time someone comes in and signs up for water, we send a guy out. Really what we're doing is moving one of those employees that was in parks, paid for the general fund money, into a water department, and then replacing that person within the general fund. So adding the new employee, yes, it increases us by 1 of the whole city, but as far as the hit on the general fund, it's actually nil, hardly anything, because I moved 1 to water. Now, that's because we see an increase in work flow on the utilities.
Do we have any measures that help us understand how much time cumulatively Public Works spends on water and sewer, so that we've got kind of an accurate picture of how much of that is tied to utilities versus Public Works?
It's something I'm really working on with that, because then you're talking cost accounting, you're talking we need to have a timesheet or a timesheet that's separated through 3 different funds, and so remember, I don't water. And then we know that Glenn, he runs the road grader more times than anybody, so he's paid out of streets. So I constantly have communication with Ann and Dave. Last year, even because we're doing a lot more sewer main projects, I kind of put another employee in sewer because that's where all their time was spent for that year. I'm really trying to find the best way to answer your question, to do it inside the budget. It's very important for the rate study. It's very important for me as the accounting. I want to make sure, and especially when you talk about a utility where user fees are charged, we want to make sure that that's level, and I think we do a fairly good job of it right now.
Okay.
Well, it kind
But
of depends too on whether it's a water or sewer break.
Yeah, and
Because if it's a water break or sewer, you got several people out there trying to get it fixed, but it's not the idea to get it done quickly, it's the idea to do it right.
the hard part too is, when you're short-staffed, when you're the supervisor actually doing the work, it's hard to keep track of, and that sounds bad, but I know we might be able to get some better statistics if we have a little bit more of a buffer, and have the time element in all our city employees is a big factor. Is how much time do you have, and where do you allocate that time? So I battle that a little bit too.
Okay.
So last time when we talked about the budget, you had this list, basically it's the same list, and you had dollars from it before. And if I remember right, it was like $619,000. Something, if I remember right. But that was, I originally thought that was a spend down of the $1 million excess reserve.
It is.
But then a question comes to mind is that you have 400,000 going to street improvements, but we've done that last year as well. We did 500,000 last year, I think.
No, for,
Okay.
Yeah.
So how is it we did this as a spend down this year of the million, but last year we didn't spend down $1 million to do that, anything on that reserve to do that?
Well, I mean,
So
if you
how'd that come about? I guess, well, we're not.
same situation. We've been spending down. We've been trying to spend down reserves for the last 2 years, 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah,
this
the problem, the good thing the thing is 2019 we performed very well on our budget with staff turnover and a lot of those areas that we really ended up a little. If you look on page 14 of the budget, I think this is what you're asking. There's your historical trend on where our fund went. And if I put the 2018 budget, you'd have us going about $400,000 under budget, trying to spend down, but we ended up almost the reverse because of our performance on the versus the budget. See 2019 budget, you see it's going down. It's the same thing. So
then 2020 proposes going down.
Going down more. We're trying to spend it down, but we got fortunate in 2017 with refinancing the land debt. We had some savings, and then 2018 was just a good budget savings year. I think you'll see on my my June finance report, we're spending more in 2018 right now, which is planned. So I think we'll get back on track with spending down reserves. But I see what you're saying.
Yeah. I just didn't know how we did that.
Yep.
And so that makes sense. Okay. So when I looked at the numbers, I thought we had about,
Yeah, about 400,000.
About 400,000.
Yep.
But when I looked at that list of things, it looked like maybe 97,000 of them could be just they could be allocated as CIP. You're directly putting out there as budget items the way they are, but they could be CIP. And so my question is, with the need for several roads needing to be rebuilt, and I mentioned this at the last workshop as well, that I wish we could do something to rebuild some roads. I wonder if we couldn't dedicate some money to rebuild a road or something. And I'd asked Ann to give me a list of what roads needed that priority, and she got me that answer this afternoon. So
You have it?
you have it.
I printed it off.
Okay. Well, I have copies
got
of
some
it
too.
for everybody.
Okay.
So, but I just got it this afternoon, so I apologize. It wasn't given to everybody earlier. So, but and these are just the ones she says are priorities. I'm just wondering, can we pick one of these and say, okay, let's make a dedicated, let's fix this road this year.
Spending down some of the excess reserves.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was about to ask a question on, is there any way that we can do more than what we did last year on our streets? And I think that's something to consider.
Yeah.
Page 24 of your budget is what you also would like to look at. That's capital improvement reserve. I'm just not sure if I didn't cross-check it with other reconstruction streets we had on that list as well. So,
Yeah, I haven't done that either. But
So above and beyond the 400,000. And, you know, when I look at this, total 2.6, but half of that is for a street that we don't have one single house on right now. So
Yeah.
I would ask that we probably look at, to do, you know, the Janesville, Memphis, Belmore, Baton, or 47, where we have residents.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
And then my hope would be, 53rd, maybe hopefully we do get some of those businesses, and that's a good problem to have then at that time, you know.
Right.
Would be something, but, so you're saying out of the 400,000, go ahead and pick now, or add to see if we can't? Tell me again what exactly your goal there is.
Well, I guess what I'm suggesting is that we had put several of these spend down issues as specific line items.
Right.
And several of those could be CIP items, okay? So I'm asking maybe move those to CIP items and take that money and make a dedicated expenditure for one of these things. I'm not saying any of those projects that are on that list are not needed to be considered. I agree with that. But I think we need to get rebuilding some roads, because there's still a lot of roads that are in bad
If
shape.
you take this money out of the CIP, what are you going to do if you have a problem?
That's what your reserves do. That's what your reserves are for.
I don't know that we got that much in reserves. If you have a sewer line break that breaks over in Pearson's, to get that
So
replaced.
if I'm
Or
hearing you
water.
right, you want to take some of them and put them in the CIP and use some of the reserves that he's trying to pay down anyway. And use that way we can take those funds and put towards these streets, right?
Towards A Street.
A Street, right. Okay.
So do we know,
So just talking about using what Ted's trying to use anyway,
can I,
in a different way.
and if you look in the CIP right now, Jim, we're projected to start the year. Don't just look at the 450, because we're carrying over about 450 because of the projects we chose in 2019. So we'll actually have about 700,000 in the CIP. You could choose any of these projects, put them in there next year, and fund it straight out of the CIP.
Okay.
And then we maintain a higher than targeted reserve in our general. So we still have a little higher than targeted in our general.
I think you need to have that.
Yeah. Well, and that, I'm just trying to say is I think we already have in the CIP is what you're wanting to do a little extra than we did
Right.
this year. I think you have that ability, because right now what I have is about 450,000 spent going to be spent this year on the projects we've chosen earlier. So next year I could almost propose you can do, 400 or 550 or whatever the
So
council
we could
decides.
maybe take like, this one was 135, and you'd be comfortable with those numbers?
Yeah. I mean, this is almost a fund in its own. It is a fund in its own that you guys can do what you want with it. I just wanted you to start next year the same at a good spot, which is about 700.
That's good.
And the reason I don't have a lot of these smaller projects in the CIP is because I'm really trying to get those out of the CIP. Frankly, because of, you really want long lifespans in your CIP, big projects. If you budget for new carpet, you don't really want to pay for it out of the capital improvement plan. It's a budget item. They're going to install it. But our city's a little different, and sometimes we'll pay for carpet out of a CIP. But it's harder to explain to different people that it's a CIP and we're paying for carpet. So I think the transfer we have going in this year is very adequate to add maybe more projects into our CIP for next year. And then that reserves that 400 for when we're budgeting for 2021. We make sure we have at least 400 if we spend every penny that we budget to transfer over again for 2021 and do more projects in 2021. I think if Ann was here, you might be it might be hard to spend $1 million on 5 different projects in one fiscal year. I'm not sure if we
I
can
wouldn't
get
suggest that.
let many of that. So what I'm saying is I think what you're suggesting is actually already in play, unless I got you completely wrong.
I appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess the only thing I'm really wanting to see if we would be willing to do is just commit to pick one of these roads and say, we're going to commit to doing that one in 2020.
Okay.
Okay.
I got what
In
you're
other
Or
words,
two.
not have a big carryover balance this year. Is that what you're saying?
You don't have.
So just on top of the
You already got the
400,000,
carry. You already got the carryover.
This is a non-budget fund, so you guys can do whatever you want out of this.
Right. So there's 710 there now. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Well-
let's just, can we, and I'm not
450.
saying any of this is a priority over one or the other. This is just a list that Ann gave me, and that's what I asked for.
10 until next year.
Just say,
Talking about.
let's make a commitment, because we went last year with a fund of something like this, and we didn't make a commitment to any of those roads.
So,
I'm saying, let's
if,
make a commitment to a road.
if Ted's telling us he's comfortable with the extra like 150, like I said, this Memphis between Auburn and 5010 Memphis at 135. I mean, I think that puts us right at Ted's comfort zone. And when we're talking about money, if Ted's comfortable, it helps me be comfortable, because I know he, with being the accountant he is, he definitely wants to make sure we're good. So
I think we also said at a previous workshop that the late August, early September timeframe was the timeframe that Ann was really going to be looking for us to select the next big project for this year.
Okay.
And there was a reason that we were waiting till the end of the year, and it was because we weren't sure. Well, part of it was for pricing, I think, and the
Costs
other
are
part
down,
was
yep.
other things that might come up throughout the course of the year that we may not expect. And so
Right.
I think that selection actually applies this year in addition to what we need to be planning on for 2020.
Okay. Well,
So we should, I think what I'm saying is I agree with you, and we should commit to doing a big project selection this year and also do it again next year.
oh, absolutely.
yeah, because what I'm seeing is, it's sometimes it's tough to come up with this kind of money, but when you have money identified there, then let's go do stuff and make it.
Let's make sure we use it.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
And that's something where, us being able to increase funding for street repairs the last couple of years has been huge, and the fact that we can do it again. Yeah.
Okay.
I guess maybe that's my only concern is that I think what we're doing is the same as what we did last year from an increase in street spending, and we overall had an almost 6% increase in revenue. And so I guess I would have really loved to see that go up by, 30, 40, 50,000.
Well,
Just in principle.
But can we go from 400 to 500,000?
What we could do is we could budget an additional 100,000
Yeah.
transfer. Because the nice thing about it is that the tough thing is we're trying to figure out the end of the year how we're going to end up, and that's
Yeah,
how we end
and
up
that's
with
a
more
moving
than what we
target,
think. And then then we're trying to figure out what we're going to do next year, 6 months before next year's even here. The nice thing with transfers is that if we budgeted for it, we wouldn't have to make it unless everything turned out right. So we could increase that by 100,000, and you would approve the budget, and then something bad happens this year, and we end up, Ted says, oh my goodness, we're 300,000 less than what I budgeted. Okay, then next year we won't make the transfer. But he's got the budget authority to that, and then if we end up with 5% more than what we had this year, then Ted can go ahead and move it, feel comfortable with that. That gives you an extra 100,000 to spend.
I like that idea.
I think we definitely should bump that to 5.
4 to 5, I like it.
Yeah, you tell Andy got $500,000, she'll
love us all.
And to Jim's point, it is really good to get specific priorities from you guys. When I'm doing a budget document for anybody that looks, it's really nice not to just say, well, we're doing street projects. It is kind of nice. However, to Justice Smith and we get really good prices at the end of the year, so that's why it's in a non-budgeted fund, because we want to capitalize on that cross year.
They want to get all the projects already lined up.
And so it's hard for us because
It's hard.
I'm not
We're
a
6
patient
months
person,
behind it.
and I
Yeah.
want to get going on this stuff.
Yeah.
So I think an increase there is
Okay.
definitely needed. I think if I haven't made this clear, streets are my number one priority, second only to selling land. and I think that's what our citizens are in favor of as well.
Yep.
Is there any more resolution on maintenance worker? I'm just looking at my highlighted things, or do we want to talk about Bel Aire Park before we discuss that?
Let's talk about the maintenance worker. I mean, we've heard, and we certainly, obviously have been in the budget. I think to Ty's point, the fact that we had 14 12 years ago, and we now have 2,500 more residents, and our growth rate is significantly higher, and we only have 9.
They work their buns off.
Yeah, I think since we have it in the budget, and we can finally do it. I think that, I mean, that's not a luxury, that's a necessity at this point.
Too bad we can't hire 2.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I guess we could.
Sorry,
That's-
Betty.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
okay
trying.
with it.
Yeah.
I think we.
Is anybody
we need
against
to
it?
have-
Let me ask you that. Is anybody against us adding that?
No,
Okay, there you go.
All right.
they are. I'm going to take them out behind.
Oh my goodness, okay.
Do we think that, so we budgeted the $51,000 for the maintenance worker? At what point will we need additional, at what point will that organization be so large that it'll need additional leadership capacity? Such that the marginal cost of an additional employee is not that the
Not a
salary?
long
The
time.
nice thing is, and Ted mentioned it, is see Dave is the assistant public works director. Basically, he's a supervisor. There's times he's out mowing. And that's where this new person can take, go out and mow for him so he can be the supervisor that he needs to be. So,
I guess I just want to, let me rephrase my question. We're comfortable that the current organization can adequately absorb an additional employee without additional administrative overhead?
yes.
Yes.
Succession planning is pretty important to us, and I think there's a lot of good. If you saw Dave and Ann's report, the very last line was very telling. Is we've had, I think there's 3 or 4 people with over 12 years, or almost 12 years here in Bel Aire as the public works. So I think, and that also adds some strain because they get more vacation days the more years you come. However, they have a lot of skills that Dave has developed over the years. I think we understand what you're saying.
No, I think I'm good with it. I think Ann's comment about being able to do more on street repairs is good, and so I guess I'll be looking to you, Ty, to make sure that happens, and that with an additional worker, we can talk about getting that extra value for the citizens. And so, if we can, for an additional worker, get more done on our streets, then as long as we're committed to making sure that happens, I'm good with it.
Yeah, but you got to remember, he doesn't just work on streets. They work water too.
Yeah, Ian talked about, all that in her report, but the idea is adding capacity to the department overall will give us capacity to actually get to the street projects that we didn't get to this year. And so that's a key value driver.
It also depends on the weather.
The last thing I had highlighted, and I sit next to Tristan, but I'm not a very big graphic designer, so I'm really proud of page 6, 7, and 8. I did this all by myself. It is really, I know we proposed kind of a rehab of Bel Aire Park, our most popular park, at certain levels, what level we want to go, if we want to do anything in 2020. That was kind of all on the table. And I just wanted to, Dave went over and shot some pictures, and I think they're pretty telling. However, money's telling as well, believe me. So we can kind of start on 6. When I asked Dave, I said, if you could only have one thing, what would it be? And he said, I got to get that playground somewhat fixed. It's a danger hazard. And so that was my one thing that he was wanting. And I took this image of the grass type overcover from the website that Dave is working with. So this would be something pretty comparable. It's all ADA compliant. I know we talked about the pebble stuff. It's actually, you can't put it in and newer playground. If you redo a playground, they won't let you even put it in.
sure.
So that's not even page 5. Yeah. Oh man, I didn't knock them out. Okay.
Okay.
That one was 28
For the playground,
for the playground. Yes.
2,800 or
1,000. 1,000. And I'll pull those up. I apologize.
Just making sure.
yeah.
One of the others were big,
And the
big
tennis
items.
was,
And the tennis was, was this one?
Let me run and go grab those real quick.
so I think what we talked about last time was doing all of that in 1 year seemed like a bit much, and if we could
Right.
kind of step into it over time, then
Individual costs are on page 1. Bottom of page 1.
Yeah, the basketball.
I knew I wrote them somewhere.
If we can nix anything, I'd nix the basketball court. Because, well, frankly, I've played basketball with my son on there before we entered into this discussion last time. I didn't even think about the crack or notice it. We just played, and this thing with basketball, if you got a crack going through the middle of the thing, yeah, it's a potential safety hazard, but it's not.
It's not a trip hazard.
It's not what the tennis court experience is like, where it's like a little crack is a huge deal.
Yeah, the tennis
Right.
ball is gonna go either that direction,
Exactly.
that direction, depending on where it
Well,
hits
no,
the
that
crack.
means we also have water. And wasn't the tennis court, weren't we, if we were going to resurface it, add pickleball lanes?
Yes.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah.
there was some discussion about that, but there was 2 prices last time. There was a 9,000 and 65,000.
yeah, there was a repair or
Page one.
Whole new court.
Look at page
Just on
one.
page 1 on the bottom has all the prices. I knew I wrote them down somewhere.
Yeah,
All right, I'll turn it up, sorry.
465 for the report.
I'll go 1 degree.
You go out
So
and
can
look
you,
at
can you
children.
repair and resurface it to make it both a tennis and pickleball court for 9,000?
It just takes new striping.
Oh, just a stripe?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's-
I don't know if the nets will be there, but it might be. Does pickleball have nets?
Yes,
I
it
can't
does.
remember.
It does have a net, but I don't know if it's the same net as the tennis.
Yeah, you can kind of see in the picture on page 7, they do have those small,
There's small lanes and I don't
they
think
pull
they
up
use the
net.
same
I'm
net.
not sure if they do.
It's a pull-up
It's a
thing.
smaller, you can kind of see the.
Yeah. I played it once, but I remember nothing.
what'd you guys think of it?
Pretty bad.
I just feel I would love to be able to. I mean, if we're gonna redo, if we have to redo the surface of the playground anyway, is there a space there where it'd be possible to move for future expansion of the tennis court? Because as much play as that gets, I think it'd be a great thing to have once we get to the point of redoing the tennis court and not just doing a surface of it, of adding a second one, because there's just.
It's packed.
Always somebody on the tennis
So
court.
I will say if the money's there, we'll have to come to you to approve the contract, and I think you can discuss all that option at that time. However, we can do it now too, but
Well-
I think the layout will be there.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm thinking if they're going to have to take everything out anyway to put the new surface down, so if we could just relocate that to where you could have, basically side by side with the fence and tennis courts there, I think that there's plenty of room in that park to do it.
You're talking about relocating the playground?
Just to the side, there's plenty of space in the park that I think it could be relocated.
Playground or the?
The play equipment, the equipment
Oh,
itself.
you want to relocate the play equipment so you have room to expand the tennis?
Yes.
Because you got to take it up anyway,
Yeah.
put it down the new surface.
Yeah,
Well, but
because you
see,
got to
with
move all that.
with Woodlawn expansion, that frontage road is going to go away.
Mess over there.
There was some
There's new parking
concept
along
of-
that
Along the
street.
backside.
That was in the plan.
The back,
The backside.
Okay, split 2 courts, I think that'd be fantastic.
We go there with my kids and we play that whole grassy area between the little awning building and the playground. It's kind of no man's land. It's like neglected.
well, that's
Neglected
because
for-
it's not ours. It belongs to the fire station.
No, on
I just
the
mean
south side of the
it's-
equipment.
Yeah, south of the playground. Around the playground, you go south. I'm just saying there is space there. I'm just saying there's enough space to move it, and it is worth considering because you don't really lose any. You just lose that empty space, and it is kind of just an empty space. Frankly, it'd be nicer if the play.
That, to make it as this, and then you add the extra basketball goals too, and you can actually have 2 games going
Oh, that's
the other
We
way.
go to that park, that sand area, baby swing there.
My kids go there because the swings are there. They like
they?
the
Okay.
swings. But yeah, it is kind of the secondary. But they don't spend a lot of time
3
there. They
minutes
come
and then
back.
she's back.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
come back.
And I know with that sand, anytime it rains, you can't go in it for 3 days. It's almost,
It's a play area that's separate than this area. With
There's some redesign on that,
that's,
and so
yeah, it does feel like that.
I kind of think that the one tennis court that is there is probably going to stay there, and it's in pretty immediate need of repair. And so I think we should plan to do that this year, and then maybe save the rest of it for the next
I think
year.
the resurface on it.
Yeah.
yeah, the 9,000. Okay.
I think the resurface, and I do think the
Wait, are you saying to do the resurface or
the
to
playground
not?
area.
To do it.
Not the entire new,
Okay.
but just the resurface.
Just do the resurface.
Yes.
So to answer what Ted was asking, let's repair and resurface tennis pickleball court and $28,000 to resurface the playground area, with the idea that we need to have discussion in the future about maybe doing a total redesign to go along with the Woodlawn expansion.
Well, I think that $28,000 resurface needs to be part of the redesign.
Well, yeah, but
I'm not sure that
That's
we're going to
what
be
I'm
able to make that a priority this year.
but what I'm asking, anything more than that, to put that in a different location. I mean, they've already
I'm
got.
thinking right now.
So now, were you saying that
Drainage.
the
However-
bottom of the slides, right?
Well, all
I
of
go
the,
down those slides, but I haven't
I
seen.
didn't see anything.
It's rough.
I know
It's
that.
been patched. You can tell it's been
I know it's
patched.
patched and oh, this is really bad. It needs to be. I mean, I know it's not good and great, but it's not like safety hazard territory.
Or we replace it.
I think we can hold off on that.
I will say a resurface of the basketball court for around the same price, $9,000, the same price you can do the tennis court. The $30,000 quoted is to put the cork type material on top. But if we wanted just to do a resurface of the basketball court, we could
I
do the
don't
same.
think we need to touch the basketball.
Yeah,
Fine for
I understand
that.
surface.
Okay.
I hear him, but I'm going to agree with what I'm hearing around here that it's not.
So I guess I have 2 check marks. The 50,000
I'm down to 2 check
9,000.
marks.
And I think we've got a lot of really great investments this year.
Okay.
So
would you be interested in putting some money towards a new design for the park? I mean, you know, the Woodlawn expansion is going to get rid of that.
Far enough that we would know where we would stand on that.
Well, of course, this is for 2020.
I know.
So, final design should then maybe design it in the fall of 2020.
I think it would
If
make
it's,
sense
you know,
to
if
look at
that's
it at the
something
same
interest-
time.
'cause if
Wouldn't
we're
that be a
talking
cost
about
savings?
moving equipment,
then we're not able to do everything
I
as
think
well
the
as we
park's
need to do.
established enough. I mean, it'd probably be.
Yeah.
park design costs.
Find out how much. $10.
I say all of us could say,
built
you know,
into
Jeff
the
might probably say, hey, when we're there with our
projected
kiddos, let's do this, let's do that.
Okay.
So the 2 check marks.
Okay.
Does that answer?
Yep. So that's kind of the want to discuss. I think
Those are the big ones.
those are the the way budget works, as you know, is first you adopt the budget, and then I publish it in the paper 10 days later, and then we have a public hearing and we adopt it.
Yeah, which meeting will be the first step?
It has to be done by
August.
August 15th, right?
Yeah,
25th.
The
They
second
changed
meeting in
it.
August, when we have to define.
Yeah, the second meeting would be the best, but
So do we need to workshop this again or are we okay moving forward with this?
That we'll want to see reflected in this, and so we may have a question or two, but I don't think we
Take the comments tonight, have it on the agenda, or is it anymore, you can lower it.
We can lower it, but we can't raise it.
and we've got quite a bit of authority. I did go ahead and
Let's go to the hospital.
so if you want to look through that, I still have a few different the non-budgeted ones aren't in there yet because I'm waiting on our audit. Page 9 of my handout, water and sewer utility funds. I kind of did the same reserve revenue line versus what we're spending. I will say on this, they just put it in the budget to see maybe how we reacted. I'm not sure.
Well, Ray Mann and I both said that we should
Yeah.
probably.
Our portions, let's see here.
A little over 50.
319.
It's a little over 50, but we can call it 50.
But basically, Park City and Bel Air both have been preparing for this for over 3 years now. So at the last meeting, it actually came up, and Ray Mann, the mayor, So that's,
Deal with it.
And it also has Woodlawn, the big brown is Woodlawn. That's cash financing the sewer portion. Let's see what, I think last time Jay was here, he was still anywhere from 400 to 600, some crazy widespread. So until we know the exact amount, we can kind of think stuff. I'm really holding my teeth on this Woodlawn. We'll see what happens. On Tuesday, and we discussed all the proposals we received. So we'll have that discussion next week and get started on the rate study. So we need to have a professional study about once every 5 to 7 years. The good thing is here now is I really want to be in the room with our professional rate study people so we can maybe prolong that to 10 years so we don't have to keep doing it every 5 to 7, and we have someone on staff that can update the report, our lines in the water and the sewer. Out to, we'll have a representative here that I'm staff is suggesting, so they'll be able to discuss anything you guys.
Doing the rate study?
Oh, so yeah.
Ted, I really appreciate all the work, ask questions of our staff. So with that, it's, dear God, we're already in this year going. So we'll have this budget at the first meeting in August then. And before I say that, does anybody want to workshop this again or have more discussion?
I'll send them out to you guys, and if you have any questions.
Work on this back in, March? Yeah. And there are some counterpart. Budget in August, it's July, let's think about it. The way you guys started working so early on this, and we were able to really discuss the questions and weigh pros and cons of the options, I think speaks to have for our workshop.
When will we be workshopping the Woodlawn project again? I know we still had to have some discussion on medians and aesthetics in order to.
And KC, and see if they'll be ready for some of that in August.
Okay.
And if not, it may be September, October.
Yeah, we want to make sure we get those projects on the list.
Absolutely.
And it's a wish list right now.
Yeah.
Right? But you gotta do it.
But they can't grant it if it's not there.
If it ain't there, then they're not
If
gonna
you don't
do it.
ask,
Whatever you want to say.
No,
all right. If not, I think we can let our boiling back to it is hot in the IG room, and Ted go home, and I'm going to adjourn our workshop. And
thank you, Ted.
thank you.
Thank you.
Ted.
Good job.
Yep, thanks,
Appreciate
Ted.
you hanging out.
We'll see. Yep. And we